So, NaTasha Yvette Williams, I'm glad that you could join me here at Cultural Attaché so we could talk about Some Like It Hot, which
I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to hear that. Anybody who knows Some Like It Hot knows it perhaps best as the Billy Wilder film with Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, and Marilyn Monroe. So, before we get started talking about the musical, I want to ask you about something that Billy Wilder is quoted as having said. He said, "Trust your own instinct. Your mistakes might as well be your own instead of someone else's." At what point in your career did you learn to trust your instinct? And how did any mistakes you may have made lead you to the stage of the Schubert Theater in New York, appearing as Sweet Sue in Some Like It Hot?
Wow. That's a great question. At what point did I learn to trust my own instincts? I really feel like I'm still learning that now, but I definitely began to celebrate who I was and myself and not try to fit into other people's mold. I think right when I booked my first Broadway show, which was the original Color Purple, around 2006, 2005, I was very aware of other people's demands on me and was always constantly trying to do what I thought they wanted. And I think that was the first time I said, look, I really want to I want this show and I want to be in it. Let me just do what is best for me. And I started to do that. And then after that, it just sort of took off. I've certainly made some mistakes. And I think a couple of times I chose to not take a job or take a job based on somebody else's needs. So I think anytime I made a mistake, it was always because I was making a choice for someone else as opposed to something that I deep down really thought was best for me.
It's tough to learn to make decisions for yourself and not feel like you're being selfish, isn't it?
Yeah. Because you have to be a little self-focused. And they're very close. Selfish, self-focused, they're very close. But for the career choices, I think sometimes we have to do that.
Well, remember, adjacent to that is also self-aware.
Yeah.
Now, this is the second musical. If people don't know that there was another musical that was inspired by Something Like It Hot called Sugar, which nobody apparently liked. I never saw it.
I know a lot of people
I've
who
never
liked
heard
it, but a lot of people didn't see it, so it couldn't sustain itself. But
well, yeah, I mean, if they had liked it, it could have sustained. But why do you think this film, this very bizarre mix of music and love story and gangsters and cross-dressing, has inspired audiences from the time the movie first came out to now a second musical?
well, I think the genius of everyone involved in the movie is speaks for itself, and that is why the movie has stood the test of time. Is one of the best movies ever thus far. I think the musical has the challenge of not of honoring the movie and all of the people that love it, and also making it current and coming into the day. But the movie has those devices, those ideas, those personalities that resonate with people today and resonated with people in 1959. And that's what made it a great movie. And that's what makes it a musical as well.
Yeah, I have to admit that I got up really early this morning and watched the movie because I haven't seen it in probably 10 years.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm not a morning person, but getting up at 5 in the morning and watching Some Like It Hot was a great way to start the day.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the character of Sweet Sue in the film, and I think her screen time in the movie is shorter than your opening number, What Are You Thirsty For?
Yes.
Truth be told. So how is Sweet Sue, from your perspective as the artist bringing her to life, in this musical different than the Sweet Sue that we see in the film?
Wow, it is very different. I actually, when I got to audition, went back to watch the movie again, and I was like, wait a minute, where is she? Where is she? What is she doing? So it was very interesting to say. I said, wait a minute, they're giving me these scenes, they're giving me these songs. Clearly, Sue is going to be doing more than she was doing in the movie. And the portrayal of her became a combination, and that's really what the characters were, a combination of Sweet Sue and the manager in the movie. They sort of combined those characters and sort of fleshed her out a little bit more. My interpretation of her just became someone who is nurturing, who's in charge, who wants to make decisions that help herself as well as the group that is supporting her. So I just took that and ran with it. Whereas in the movie, Sweet Sue's poking her head out and telling people to not to go to bed or stop drinking or whatever, those kinds of things. But we just sort of fleshed her out even further and made her be a great big sister, mother figure, auntie figure for the band leaders. And she gains a lot from that as well. So she's not just giving orders, she's sort of gaining a family as she takes them on the road.
Unfortunately, being in Los Angeles, I haven't been to New York since the show opened, so I haven't had a chance to see it. But from the clips that I've seen, it looks like it's a tremendous amount of fun.
Oh my God.
How much work does it take to make it look like it's that much fun on stage?
Well, we've done the work. Now that rehearsal period was crazy. We lost fingers and toes and knees and hamstrings because we are dancing and the choreography is spectacular. The sets are beautiful. The clothes are gorgeous. That was the working period where we were constantly trying to just make sure things were in the right place, make sure you're standing right, make sure things are clicking, make sure no one's going to get hurt or hit. And that was intense beyond, especially for a non-dancer, very intense. That was work. Now that the show is together and it's frozen and I mean, not that it's not growing because it grows every week. We come and find new things, but now it is just living. It is just being on stage, knowing these characters and presenting them to this new audience every night. And it's not work. Sure, at the end of it, we're tired, but it really is an expression of our the love and joy we had in making a musical and in making these characters come to life. And the cast itself, we're all close and friends, and I like them, and it's a joy to be with them. And it really doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun.
Well, it's interesting because I asked Betty Buckley when she was touring as Dolly Levi in Hello Dolly, and I said, how much work does it take each performance to make that much energy and joy come off the stage? And she goes, you're the only person who's ever asked me that, and it takes a huge amount of work. Nobody knows exactly how much energy it takes to get through those 2.5 hours or so. I assume it takes a lot of energy for the company of Some Like It Hot.
Definitely energy, and you're definitely going to be looking for some Epsom salt or ice baths or Bengay or whatever you're using to get through it. But it's exhilarating too. Once that show curtain comes up and that crowd roars, claps, and you go on this journey that is you're discovering every day. So it's a lot of energy. Now, don't get me wrong, you gotta have the energy. But it's still a great deal of fun. Great deal of fun.
There was an interview that Matthew Lopez gave the New York Times, and he talked about Sweet Sue. And he said, quote, Sue always felt to me like a character out of a Jazz Age movie, except in a way she would never have been depicted at the time. Do you agree with him? And what, if any, conversations did you have in rehearsals with him or with Casey about how this particular part has been adapted for a modern time?
I think our creative team, all of them, have been very intentional about the direction that the show has taken, the writing with Matthew, including those things. I do agree because we are set up in the 1930s. I am a Black woman running this band and working for and traveling throughout the country, mostly toward the West, so that it is a little safer, but it is still dangerous. It is still during this very challenged time, a time that sort of resembles a lot of what we're seeing today in terms of our racial challenges that we're having in our country. I do agree that she would not have been depicted this way. I do agree that there are some scenes and some moments where I have to really negotiate and navigate how I'm going to speak to certain people and still maintain the safety and joy in the particular scenes that we're having. And I just feel like because of the onset intention of our creators, our creatives, that Sue travels a road that is difficult, but she's navigating it very well and not offending people and sort of educating people as to what is possible.
Well, you mentioned that it's not radically different than the time we live in now on certain levels because of the race issues that this country is still having to come to terms with. Do you think there's a subtext to the story being told here that you hope is landing with people that they get some of those modern day parallels?
I'm not sure if they get those particular parallels, and I'm not sure that we're even presenting those. I think because the cast is very diverse, and the messages are that there is space created for everybody, and that everyone should be allowed to be them, whoever they truly feel they are. Those are the messages that I think we're sending out, subliminally, or I don't know what the other word is, but just underneath all of those things, because you're able to see these different groups of people together and sharing the space. Hopefully, my hope and my prayer is that you begin to see, wow, I'm not that much different than these people, that person. They might look different, but we're all moving in the same way. We're all laughing, we're all loving, we're all trying to achieve something. Maybe we're working towards something in our career, but for whatever each person is doing on stage, because we're all different and we're all working together, hopefully that message comes through, that we're more alike than we are different. And if we would just listen to each other and not attack each other, we might be in a better place.
Yeah, I think that's the key, listening.
Mm.
I was brought up Protestant, but I'm an atheist now, but I still believe in the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. If we did that, it seems like the whole world would be a lot easier place.
I agree.
Now, this film, which I think is revered as a classic, was both ahead of its time and a product of its time. Some of the things that it tackles subtly are still things that are being tackled in stories today, on stage, on screen, on television. Some of them feel a little creaky and a little old. What do you think are the changes that the creatives have done with Some Like It Hot that really fully bring it into the 2020s?
Well, I think first of all is making the cast diverse is definitely one of the biggest changes that we have. But also being careful to not make fun of men in dresses. Whereas I think the film, because of the time period, used that as the joke. That is for just put a man putting on a dress. That part of it was a joke, as opposed to a man putting on a dress and then that feeling like clothing, just clothing. And so I think that the direction that our show goes in and the messages that we're championing, is just that the inner person is the person and the other stuff is just outside, so that we're never trying to make fun or make dressing up like be a joke. And I think that was something very, very poignant that we've decided and that they've decided. And so that the humor comes out of life situations. The humor comes out of the fact that these two men are trying to escape these gangsters, as opposed to anything else. And that the journey that they go on helps them to discover truths within themselves that then become accepted by everyone.
Right. Now, there were a couple musicals that were based on very popular films that featured men in drag in the last couple years. There was Mrs. Doubtfire, which did not do well, and Tootsie, which also didn't do so well. And Tootsie, I think, is the closest of contemporary films to what the kind of film Billy Wilder used to make. But I talked to numerous people who said maybe maybe men in drag is just not that interesting anymore, not that funny. And maybe it's a tired old trope that people rely on. This show is succeeding. You guys are entertaining audiences. You've gotten the reviews. What do you think makes the way Some Like It Hot tells its story work in ways that those other musicals, also based on popular films, were not able to accomplish?
I think it is also a lot to do with what I said about just the intentionality of not making it a trope, making it just be what these two people had to do in that particular situation, and so that the jokes don't come from, oh, I'm gonna put on a dress and I'm gonna sway a certain way and I'm gonna talk a certain way to depict what I think a woman is, or what I think a man is dressed as a woman, what I think a drag performer would do. None of the scenes are like that. They're all about the truth of the situation. When they put on the drag, they're trying to save their lives, first of all, and then it becomes their life. So it's not poking fun at it, which is a tired trope, which is something that 2023 audiences are probably not going to be interested in watching. So we haven't made the jokes about the dress. We've made the jokes about the truth and the life of what would happen if this happened, and as we go on these roads. So I think that's what's made the difference. But I think there's still a lot of people that are just not open, you know, as we know, there's lots of crazy people.
There are. Thankfully, a lot of them can't afford a Broadway ticket.
I can't afford that either.
That's what today's ticks are for.
Yes, exactly. Today's ticks, yes.
So when in watching the film this morning, one of the things that really stood out to me was how important it was for the other characters who were not the two men in drag, how important it was for them to believe them, how important it was for them to not see past the disguise. What is Sweet Sue's role in looking at these two and being okay with them and believing who they are? Or does part of the story, since I haven't seen it, does part of the story revolve around Sweet Sue starting to pull this thing apart?
No, it does not. Sweet Sue gets the information very late. But in the beginning, she needs them. She needs those two instruments, those two people to complete her band. And she's already booked this tour. They're going on the road. They're actually at the train station. And so she needs to believe them. And all she says was, wow, you're very interesting women. You've chosen to, one of my lines is, I admire how you've chosen to express yourself through perfume. Because earlier they're in the dressing room dressing up as these women and they're spraying all this perfume on them and they're putting on makeup and they're getting dressed up in drag, if you will, and are nervous about it working. So because I need them, my eyes and my heart mesh. And it's like, I believe whatever I need to make this work. And right now, I need these two instruments in my band to make it work, to sell what I've done. And then as we go on the journey and they're doing things that might not be what I would do, I'm still just like, wow, interesting women. There's always a question of, where did you come from? You're just a little bit strange, just a little off. But because of my need for this to work, I think is why Sweet Sue never really sort of figures out what's going on with those two.
Even though there's probably not a Sheboygan School of Music.
Even though there's probably not a Sheboygan School. One of the earlier scripts, one of the characters, it's either me or Minnie, said, I didn't know Sheboygan had a school of music. I didn't know there was a Sheboygan. So they say that, we don't say that anymore, but that was an initial line, when they say, oh, we're going back to Sheboygan for our third semester or whatever it was.
I don't know if you know the history of how Some Like It Hot came to be. But I read there's a book called Conversations with Wilder that the filmmaker Cameron Crowe did, a whole series of conversations that he had with Billy Wilder. And Billy told him that was inspired by a 1932 low-budget German movie called Fanfares of Love.
Yeah,
Do you know about this movie?
I did hear that. I don't know the movie, but I did. We were given that in some of the information as we started the process. But yes,
I was surprised to reread this section and realize that was two guys who needed a job who went into blackface. And then later in the film also dressed up to be in a female band. Now, Billy Wilder wisely, 27 years later, dropped the first really offensive part of it.
Right. Thank goodness.
But for we're nearly 100 years into this story being told. You know, do you think there's something at the heart of it in terms of wanting love, wanting to find the perfect person that is ultimately what is appealing to people about this story? Or is there something else?
No, I think we all want, to be loved and needed and appreciated. That's a very basic human need. And every character in this story, not just the two guys who are running for their lives, have those issues and those desires and are pursuing them. And whatever your need is as a human, as an audience member, you can find it in the show. I mean, Sue has decided to leave working for somebody else, start her own band, and make it happen, even though she needs investors or she needs all this stuff. But she's decided, I'm not working for anybody else anymore. Let me get a band together, let me go. And these girls that come into this band, including Sugar, who's played by Adriana Hicks, are missing something in their lives in Chicago. So they're searching. So every member of the company is looking for something, is striving for something. And as you get to know these characters, you somehow can identify. The hope is that everybody in the audience can identify with one or more of them in terms of the human need to be loved, accepted, to be successful, to be safe, to be appreciated for who you are at the very basic point of who you are, to be accepted for who that is. And so every audience member can find those people as they watch it and in that story. So that's why the story, I think, has been so successful throughout the years, is because you can look, even if you're looking at the gangster, even if you're looking at the maitre d' or the hotel person running the hotel, what about that person can trigger something in you and inspire something in you? The gangster's trying to run his successful business and keep it alive. And yes, he wants to kill people, but again, there might be something other than the gangster that you can identify with in the story. But I think that's what keeps it so apart and so successful in people's minds, is because they can identify with some of those human needs.
Right. Now, when I watched the Macy's Day Parade performance that you all gave, the first thing I thought was, you must be really happy not to be sleeveless like most of the dancers when you were doing that. Because that looked like
it was gorgeous. It was so gorgeous that day. It was not freezing, and I was like so happy for them. But yeah, I was great. It was such perfect costume for me. But they were okay too.
But I looked at that costume, and I don't know if this was the inspiration, but I thought, I'm looking at a female Cab Calloway.
Well, I certainly watched a lot of it. There were a lot of female band leaders, black female band leaders back in the time. I don't remember the woman's name who Mark and Scott told me that they patterned this woman after. But she, in seeing pictures of her, she was actually, I want to say she was non-binary. I was going to say she was lesbian. I think she was non-binary, but she always wore tuxedos and pants and stuff like that. So that it was patterned after her. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. And so yes, but Cab Calloway was also a person I watched, and there were several female conductors that I began to look at during that time, who danced a lot and were very showy and moved around. So we put a little bit of that in our show as well.
Right. Now, in 2000, you were an ensemble member of the touring production of Jason Robert Brown's musical Parade.
Yeah.
Which is back on Broadway at the same time that you're in Some Like It Hot. I saw the original production, even though it was short-lived, in 1998. But why do you think Parade may be resonating now with audiences in a way that it didn't 25 years ago?
I think it has a lot to do with all of the social injustice, racial injustice that we are experiencing. Not that it was always been there, but that the awakening of it and that the realization since really since George Floyd's murder, I guess, people are more aware of some of the disparities in our society. I think that it probably any story that you're going to have that will tell the injustice of any particular group of people will probably resonate a little bit differently now. I'm hoping that that is the case. I'm hoping that it is a part of the change and the shift of people recognizing that we all have a story to tell, all have a space to take up, and that it doesn't negate space for anyone else. It just means that there's room for everybody story to be heard. So I'm hoping that that's what the shift is for Parade, because it's a beautiful story, heartbreaking story.
It is, and it's beautiful music, really beautiful music. Well, let me ask you about if there's a personal shift in how you look at yourself and what you want to do moving forward, because I guess it was 2019 you did your Broadway bucket list online where you sang you sang from Caroline or Change, Porgy and Bess, and Smokey Joe's Cafe.
Yes. Wow.
And 4 years later, has your bucket list changed? Does success in a show like Some Like It Hot give you a new perspective on what's possible for you and what you might like to do now?
Yes. My shift has changed. Certainly the success of Some Like It Hot and being this character who is an integral part, I think, of the story itself, and who is shifting and changing throughout the production, has certainly inspired me to think bigger. Maybe I don't know. I am, but also the shift in our country has certainly inspired me. I'm a part of Black Theater United, which is a group who is very interested in protecting Black artists, Black lives, not just in theater, but also just in the world, in the community. So my shift is basically learning how to be more like Sue, Sweet Sue, in making decisions that affect other people, going on journeys that empower people. And so I'm not really sure where that means artistically, other than maybe I want to write more. I want to create more and create more vehicles and stories that will tell some of the unsung and untold stories of Black people and of other people, disenfranchised groups. So that's what I'm interested in as well.
Now, there is the title song, Some Like It Hot, but would some like it Tony as well?
Oh, God, who wouldn't like that? I mean, obviously, it's not. I guess I'm thinking a lot of people are saying to me now, "Oh, this is you're gonna get this, or this show's gonna get a lot of Tonys." And I've been in a lot of shows and been close or thought of or been on certain people's lists and all that kind of stuff. And while it is wonderful and terribly exciting, and it is what you want, and that is one of the goals, it's also, you just never know what people are thinking. And when it comes down to that vote or that nomination, you just never know, because there's so many good shows. Just in the last 2 months, the things that have opened up have been very exciting. And I'm so glad that Broadway's back, first of all, and that it is back with so many choices. Obviously, I'd be crazy to say we don't want Tonys over at Something Like It Hot. Of course we do. But again, if we don't, the work that we're doing is great work, and I'm very proud of it. And the music, the costumes, the story, the book, the actors, the dancers, everything really is wonderful and hot. And it is to say to the audience and those that come in, come commune with us, because we can gather in a space together, we can laugh together, and there's space for you inside this theater and in the world. So go claim your space. So what I'm hoping we get lots of Tonys, but even if we don't, I'm hoping people come in and they get that message and can take that away, because that's what's blessed me. There is space for me, there's space for my talent, There's space for my size. I'm a full-figured woman. There's space to create. I'm an older woman. There's space for multi-generational groups are in this particular show. So we also get to see all of that diversity, all of that equity. And that's what is most important. So I hope the Tony people see that and say, wow, there's something very special about this production. And yes, check it off. Get my vote.
Well, let me ask you one more thing then, about that there is space for you. I want to take you back to the end of the first act of Ragtime in 1997, when I believe you made a phone call to your mother.
Yeah.
And you said,
Oh, God, you made me cry.
oh my God, this is what I so want to do. I know I'm in the right place. 26 years later, after that phone call, how do you feel at the end of each performance of Some Like It Hot? I'm assuming you aren't having second thoughts about this being the right place for you.
No, I feel like I am literally living my dream every day. It hasn't always been as wonderful and as fulfilling as it is right now, but it's always been the goal. And if I can make that phone call to my mother right now, which I can't, she has passed, but every day I feel like that little girl 26 years ago, making that phone call. I got to meet and work with Lennon Stephen years later and Dessa Rose. Ragtime was changed my life. I mean, I moved here to be a performer. But if there wasn't a question prior to that or how I was going to make it happen, that afternoon in the theater certainly solidified it for me. And I knew that whatever I had to do, that on that stage was where I wanted to be. And the fact that I get to do that and have gotten to do that is a gift to me. It's something that I don't take lightly. And I'm ever grateful. But no change of plans. That's where I want to be. It fulfills me in a way that nothing other than maybe motherhood has done. And I am just grateful. Just grateful.